Why France's economy is failing. France, the land of fine wine, luxury fashion, and the Eiffel Tower. A country admired for its culture, its history, and its influence on the world stage. But behind the glamour, a different story is unfolding. France is the 7th largest economy in the world and the 3rd largest in Europe. Yet economists warn that it is heading toward long-term decline. Forecasts suggest that by 2075, France may fall all the way to 15th place globally, overtaken by faster-growing nations in Asia and beyond. Why is this happening? Why is a country with such wealth, talent, and resources struggling to stay competitive? In this video, we'll break down the hidden flaws in France's economy: unemployment, pensions, debt, and political unrest, and explore whether France can reverse its decline or if its best days are already behind it. To understand France's struggles, we need to look back at history. After World War II, France was devastated, its cities in ruins, its industries destroyed. But out of the rubble came one of the most extraordinary economic booms in modern history. Economists call it Les 30 Glorieuses, the 30 glorious years. From 1945 to 1975, France enjoyed rapid growth. Living standards soared, infrastructure was rebuilt, and the French welfare state took shape. Much of this success came from a model of state-led capitalism. The government directed investment, controlled key industries, and prioritized industrialization. For decades, it worked. France became a pillar of the new European economy. But by the 1980s, the system began to creak. The rise of globalization, the integration of the European Union, and the adoption of the euro meant France had to compete in a more open market. The old state interventionist model gave way to EU rules and market liberalization. And while this helped modernize parts of the economy, it also exposed weaknesses that France never fully addressed. One of France's biggest challenges has always been its labor market. Unemployment in France has remained stubbornly high for decades. Even today, the rate hovers around 7 to 8%. That may not sound catastrophic, but it's consistently higher than the EU average, and far worse than Germany, where unemployment is closer to 3%. Why? The French labor market is seen as rigid and costly. Employers face heavy payroll taxes and social security contributions. Labor laws make hiring and firing complex and expensive. The minimum wage, while protective for workers, is one of the highest in Europe, discouraging businesses from hiring, especially young people and low-skilled workers. The result? Youth unemployment remains alarmingly high, often above 17%. Many young graduates find themselves overqualified for the jobs available, yet underexperienced for the positions they aspire to. This mismatch has pushed tens of thousands of educated French workers to leave the country, seeking opportunities in places like the UK, Canada, or Australia. Economists call this the brain drain. Meanwhile, France scores in the bottom third of OECD nations for job creation. Entire segments of society, immigrants, minorities, and older workers, struggle to find work. The labor market has become a bottleneck holding back growth. If unemployment is one problem, pensions are another, and together they're explosive. France spends nearly 14% of its GDP on pensions, the 3rd highest level in the OECD. Compare that to Germany or the UK, which spend closer to 10%. The system is pay-as-you-go. Today's workers fund the retirement of today's pensioners. But with an aging population and fewer young workers, the math no longer works. By 2050, 1 in 3 French citizens will be over 60. That means fewer taxpayers supporting more retirees. President Emmanuel Macron tried to fix this in 2023 by raising the retirement age from 62 to 64. The response? Nationwide strikes, millions of protesters, and political chaos. Pensions in France are seen not just as an entitlement, but as a social contract. Touching them is political suicide. But without reform, deficits will explode. Economists project pension shortfalls lasting well into the 2070s. In simple terms, France's system is a slow-motion Ponzi scheme. Unless contributions rise, retirement ages increase, or benefits shrink, the system will bankrupt the country. And France's debt is already huge. For more than 40 years, France has run a fiscal deficit, spending more than it earns. Today, its public debt stands at about 112% of GDP, among the highest in Europe. Servicing this debt, just paying interest, costs tens of billions every year. That's money that could have gone into infrastructure, education, or innovation. France is trapped in a vicious cycle. High unemployment reduces tax revenues. High pensions increase spending. To fill the gap, the government borrows more. And every global crisis, whether the 2008 financial crash, the COVID pandemic, or the war in Ukraine, adds another layer of debt. Germany, by contrast, managed to maintain stricter fiscal discipline, running surpluses in the 2000s. Italy, on the other hand, is even worse than France. But economists warn France risks drifting toward the Italian model, a large but stagnant, debt-laden economy. Then there's the social side of the crisis. France has one of the highest tax burdens in the world. Total taxes represent over 45% of GDP, the highest in the OECD. For businesses and workers, this means heavy payroll deductions, high corporate taxes, and rising income taxes. Yet despite all this taxation, inequality persists. Social mobility is low. Immigrant communities face much higher unemployment rates than native citizens. Many young French feel they will never live as well as their parents did. This frustration boils over into the streets. In 2018, the Yellow Vest protests paralyzed the country. In 2023, pension reform brought millions out again. Political instability has become the norm, not the exception. For investors, this signals risk. For governments, it makes long-term reform nearly impossible. And as the world shifts, France risks falling behind. Emerging economies like India, Indonesia, and Brazil are growing much faster. By 2050, France will likely slip out of the global top 10 altogether. That doesn't mean France has no strengths. It remains a global leader in luxury goods, aerospace, nuclear power, and tourism. French companies like LVMH, Airbus, and EDF are world champions in their industries. But they can't compensate for structural weaknesses at the national level. Without major reforms, France may stagnate while other nations surge ahead. So, is France doomed? Not yet. But it faces a choice. It can reform its pension system, modernize its labor market, reduce deficits, and unlock innovation. Or it can keep kicking the can down the road, watching as debt grows, protests continue, and competitiveness declines. France has the talent, the resources, and the history of resilience. But will it act in time? That's the real question. What do you think? Is France headed for long-term decline, or can it stage a comeback? Let me know in the comments below.